So this year, the Joburg Theatre is commemorating 60 years of storytelling, plays and musicals. And as part of the Diamond Jubilee celebrations, Joburg Theatre has prepared a series of productions. Very excited about this one. It includes Kill, Move, Paradise. It's directed by award-winning director Lesedi Job and co-produced by the Second Round Productions. Let's tell you what it's all about. Lesedi joins us, together with actors Hungani Ndlovu and Zolani Shangase. To all three of our guests, welcome home. Great to have you on the program. It's lovely to see you. It's an important production to speak about in the context of what we've been through as a globe. Lesedi, let me start with you. The George Floyd moment in the U.S. has obviously sparked all kinds of conversations, and I imagine this, in part, is what inspired this production.
It is exactly what inspired this production for me. We were in lockdown in South Africa, and I know that there were a lot of protests that were going on in other countries, but because we were in lockdown, I guess as South Africans, the best we could do was take to social media. Yeah. And also, I'm just so aware of how when something goes wrong, you know, when there is some incident within our society and the world, we react in that moment, and then very quickly thereafter we forget. And I sat back and I thought to myself, I really, really would like to do something beyond this moment in 2020, because this is not done. And unfortunately, and quite sadly so, on the 2nd of February in this year, there was yet another victim of police brutality, Amir Locke. You know, and also even during lockdown in this country, there were victims of police brutality in South Africa, you know, and it inspired me to find a play that would touch on the Black Lives Matter movement. I'm
getting ahead of myself. I've spent so much time reading about the play. I've taken it for granted that there are people perhaps who are not aware of what the play is fundamentally about. So let's start there. I'll throw the question to you again, Lesedi. It's a story about the plight mostly of black men and women who are slain for whatever reason. And so you try to place that through a South African lens in some respect. Tell us a bit more about the play itself.
So basically it's these 4 men who find themselves in a waiting room for the afterlife. They are all victims of police brutality within the American society. And that's essentially it. Yeah. It happens in the middle of nowhere, obviously a spiritual realm. And they go on a journey of, number 1, discovering what has happened to them, and number 2, this journey of being a black man within the American community, you know. And when we talk about putting a play like that within a South African context, that there are parallels within themes. The black identity, the experience of a black person globally is quite similar. Slavery, colonization, apartheid, there has been an oppressive regime that all black people have experienced or are feeling the effects of the remnants of it, and it has affected the identity of the black individual.
Absolutely. Zolani and Hungani have the tall task of trying to embody this. Yeah. It's a multifaceted kind of characterization, I imagine, that you have to undertake to pull this off. Speak to us about where you start in trying to do that. Hungani, I'll begin with you, because let's be frank, the black experience may be similar, but the black community itself is not homogenous.
Yeah. Sure, I think the experience to creating the characters, I play Griff, one of the characters, and Zolani plays Daz, and I think the journey to creating these characters was firstly to understand that we are actually playing real life people that have passed on. Yeah. So being able to understand the journey that this individual went through in their own life, and how they died, and the aggressiveness of their death and how violent that is, and trying to understand the fact that I'm in this space that I don't know, I don't understand, and yet do I really accept the fact that I'm here? And there's a whole process that happens to us eventually getting to understand that this is where we're at and this is what we need to do to move forward. And for me personally, as Hungani, I was afraid of death. Yeah. Because I didn't understand what happens after death. But through this play, like, it's given me a sense of peace with understanding that the afterlife has a particular process that you follow in order to transcend. Whether it's real or not, I will see when the day comes. But you know, the play has given me that. So it's been quite an interesting journey getting into character, for sure.
And I'm sure there's been a lot of pressure, Zolani, in doing this right, because as Hungani mentions, it's reflecting on people who actually existed. There's a great responsibility that comes with that. especially in a context where you never know who's going to see the play. For all you know, people who know these individuals may catch sight of it.
Yeah, no, it was definitely a scary and tall task because, I mean, my character is based on Alton Sterling, and watching how quickly his life was taken away in 90 seconds when the police apprehended him, he was gone. You know, from that moment that they apprehended him, and then he was gone. So it is an incredible journey to journey together as people, and as, you know, South Africans talking about the story, we can relate. There is so much that we can relate to, and simply because we are black people, you know, and as black men, we're not allowed to be vulnerable, we're not allowed to be fragile, and this show explores those things and those themes in such a way that allows black men to look at themselves in a different light, you know, because we're seen as the problem in society. So how do we address the problem if we don't know what the root cause is? And this piece is very much a political statement, you know, to say that see us, we actually do exist, we are humans, and we are alive, we've got blood in our, you know, in our veins, and we're important and that we matter. So that's really, I think, the journey of this piece.
It's pretty wild that even as black men, dare I say, we almost have to remind ourselves of our own humanity, right? And I imagine the play does that in some respects, because I can only imagine the fear that these men were confronted with moments before they lost their lives. And it's the kind of fear that I guess exists when we try to speak about the afterlife, Lesedi. So how did you begin going down that route?
Well, I think based on the fact that I am a particularly spiritual person, and that in the Bible we were not promised the greatest of time here, but there's peace after what happens on this earth, you know. And my approach was the fact that, like Hungani said, there is peace in the afterlife, that if there is fear in that moment, and I think, you know, somebody was talking about it yesterday, the title in and of itself, Kill, Move, Paradise. You are killed and you have to move to your paradise, you know. So approaching that was really, I mean, obviously we've touched on that fear, we've touched on that discomfort, we've touched on that, I mean, because honestly, how do you sit and acknowledge being dead and what happens to you? And that's the visceral within the theatre piece that we have really gone to and we've explored. But then something that happens, which also an audience can experience, about a peace, a sense of celebration. You know, I think also, and this is where the South African context comes in, that we as people, as black people in South Africa, are those that have an acknowledgement and a celebration of our ancestors. We have clan names, you know, and there's a sense of going, could these people be there waiting for us, coming to celebrate the fact that we have arrived, as they've stood back watching, and they've watched this journey from the moment that these men were killed to this place, now in this space. So capturing all of those things to give, I guess, the actor a sense of release after the performance, but even an audience, you know. And so that's how that's all the different things that were going on in my head.
And we could listen to you speak the whole morning. Ongani, it's difficult to be part of this play and not deal or confront your own mortality. I struggle to imagine how anybody could honor the moment, honor the character, without in some respects thinking about, you know, perhaps moments that you had to confront where your mortality stood right in front of you.
Look, I spent some time in the States studying there, and when this whole police brutality thing was picking up and protests were happening in New York City, I was there. And there was an actual incident that happened with me where I thought that, okay, I actually think I need to go back home, meaning come back to South Africa, because I was starting to be afraid to even just walk out the house with a hoodie on. So there's a lot of, like, things that I relate to, understanding the characters, and I'm already getting emotional just talking about this because it's so real to me, you know, and not even being able to, like, speak to my parents or explain to my parents what I'm experiencing, because then they will have a sense of fear and they won't be able to do anything all the way back here. So it definitely took me back to that space instead of, like, trying to figure out things in the now, but it took me back to when I was that side, and just really relating to the fact that this is a real experience, not just for other black men, but just for me, myself, I had an encounter. So definitely it hits home. I mean, whether you've experienced it personally or not, you maybe have read about it somewhere or someone has told you a story about it. And I think that's what this is about. You know, anyone can relate to this.
Yeah, yeah. One of the pearls of being part of any production, no matter what the content is about, is the connection you're able to make as a team. So, Lani, as we wrap up our conversation, I'm sure that's one of the things that I imagine you can take away from this in some respects, not only personally as an actor, but as an individual who's had to deal with the subject matter, the kind of, at least, we've got each other in the midst of all of this.
It's so funny you say that, because one of the last lines that Orabile Ditsele, who plays Tani, says in the show is, "I got you." And seeing that as black men, we have to support each other. We have to be there for each other, because if we don't have each other, we'll continue being the problem, you know, and we won't ever get to a place where black people can succeed together, you know. So it is a family, it is a brotherhood, it is a brotherhood of men led by this lovely lady right here, who's just, you know, championed us to where we are now. And we had our first show last night, and it was epic, and we're going to get to do it again at 3 p.m. today. So yeah, people want to come see the show and come check out these young, awesome gents doing the most, you know. They must come to the Joburg Theatre, you know, and buy tickets for Kill Move Paradise.
Absolutely, at the very least, because it's an important discussion. Thank you so much for coming through. It's been a lovely moment spending this with you, and I hope at the very least that the discussion is had, you know, and we're able to move forward in whatever way we can from the tip of Africa. Ungani Ndlovu, Lesedi Job, Zolani Shangase, our guests who are part of the production at the Joburg Theatre, Kill Move Paradise. Once again, thanks very much indeed for your time.